This free program is paid for by the listener members of KPFT Houston. If you're not already a member, think about joining with us to help keep free speech alive.
Somewhere we must come to see that we must rise up and stand on our own 2 feet and say to our white brothers that we are determined to be men. This is what the movement is saying. We're somebody. We are determined to gain our freedom. And we're going to start with ourselves by freeing our own psyche, our own souls. This is where we've got to start first. Well, you see, in the final analysis, if we're going to be truly free, nobody else can do that for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do that for us. No Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do that for us. If we are going to be truly free, we must reach down into the inner depths of our being and sign with the pen and ink of assertive manhood our own Emancipation Proclamation.
Welcome to the Open Journal Hour on Pacifica's KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, Texas, and 89.5 on the island of Galveston, and at www.kpft.org. I'm Emmett Abati Doe with another edition of On the Real Side and Part 3 of Getting Away with Murder, the Atlanta child murders. But first, I must raise my voice again to decry the ongoing racism and lethargy displayed by the so-called peace movement and the cowardly indifference of the masses of black people here and abroad in our collective failure to evolve an effective response to another unprovoked invasion of the land of Haiti, again by the United States, aided by Canada and France, and to our continuing shame failing to mount an effective response to stop the deliberate starvation and murder of the brave Haitian people, determined to defy imperialist army under the command of the United Nations. At the very moment Kofi Annan and his stooges were apologizing for the Rwanda bloodbath that took place on his watch, he was committing yet another one, this time in broad daylight and to another African people. That said, let's turn and please join me in sending mucho kudos and big ups to the Pacifica Radio family, the last bastion of free speech radio, for its July 28th national special that debuted the launching of Telesur, the New World Independent Television Network. Telesur, the long overdue challenge to the propaganda monopoly in the Americas that has served the interest of only a few. We salute the people of Brazil and the leadership and people of Venezuela, Cuba, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, and our Caribbean brothers and sisters. We hold the intention that their example of integrity, courage, citizenship, and brotherhood will rub off on their faint of heart North American neighbors. Having said that, you guessed it, boys and girls, we won't have time to develop that subject today, nor will we have time to talk about Tony Blair's recent political good fortune in the spirit of George II. It's a wag the dog, folks. Anyone remembering the tribal warfare between the Brits and the Irish that lasted most recently 35 years, with over 3,000 Brits alone falling victims to 20 years of so-called terror attacks on the people and the streets of London, or the In the Name of the Father Guildford 4, or the Birmingham 6, all scapegoats. Now multiply them by effect of God only knows what number, and will add only a few more drops to the bloody hands of Tony Blair. No time for that one either. Next up, oh boy. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, more marches. Just what the dumbed-down masses needed. More marches. The coming flurry of marches will be peopled by misleading a new generation of high school and college students and youth too young to remember or wise enough to understand, and those craning their necks to catch a glimpse of hope, and those awash on the sinking economic and political ship of the black bourgeoisie, who are becoming less and less of use to the liberal progressive establishment, and specifically the Democratic Party, stumbling over itself to win the race to the center of left. In my day, the center left were called Dixiecrats, and having fame and wealth, even a lot of it, makes no exception. Can you say Muhammad Ali, Reuben Hurricane Carter, O.J., Mike Tyson, Whitney Houston, Bobby Brown, Kobe Bryant, and thoughtful Michael Jackson? Those who are the descendants of Africans who were stolen 500 years ago and who are still treated as property made in America. In this rising tide of fascism are and have been positioned as obsolete and marked recycle. Half understanding this leaderless class, privileged class of pseudo-black royalty desperately seek to ingratiate and position themselves to be in the service to the next power broker. So why march now? And what will marching accomplish? Marches are a perfect platform to announce a changing of the guard and resuscitate the ailing image and careers of the Jesse Jackson, along with a gallery of bankrupt politicians exhausted of purpose, direction, and integrity. And the pop stars and sea of black humanity will serve well as props to confirm to the white power structure that Louis Farrakhan is the next hand-picked leader and can be placed in firm command of the affairs of the people made in America. Reality be damned to the humiliated and the despised black men and children barely surviving on the streets and alleyways of America. To this outrage, what's the response? Let's have another march. I hope demands will be made to look more closely as to where we are being led and for whose benefit. We are not all asleep. We have yet to have a real debate that's unstaged or on this very critical issues, concerns and questions of the moment. We are again as a people at the same crossroad over 40 years ago when we were stampeded toward integration in the courts as opposed to desegregation and the streets, fighting to strengthen, develop our own institutions, communities, and exercising the right to control the funds to educate our own children in neighborhood schools. But we got bamboozled, hoodwinked, taken for a ride, got a Civil Rights Act, got ripped off, got affirmative action that gave middle-class white women unfair advantage over us in a bill they told us was for Dr. King and others who died for. And once again, it could have only happened with a lot of help from what soon became black royalty. And some received more than 30 pieces of silver. I didn't believe that that was the way to go at the time, so I chose not to chase the money or the illusion of personal power. But I did fail to more openly and more forcefully challenge the propaganda and treachery. I thank the ancestors for a second chance to demonstrate even more courage than I did in Vietnam and remain totally committed to the people made in America. As we begin part 3 of Getting Away with Murder, the Atlanta Child Murders, with Chet Dettlinger and Jeff Prue, co-authors of the Pulitzer Prize-nominated book, The List, and a very special guest, Miss Tarari Jones, an Atlanta child survivor and the author of Leaving Atlanta. So get your questions and comments ready and write this number down. 713-526-5738. That's 713-526-5738. Go ahead, write it down, and call a friend. That's right, call them right now and tell them to join you here on The Real Side at KPFT 90.1 FM Houston and 89.5 FM in Galveston, Texas, and on the World Wide Web at kpft.org. We will return after playing the July 29th pre-recorded update with Wayne Williams' attorney. I'm Emmett Abati Doe. Welcome to On the Real Side, attorney Michael Lee Jackson, attorney for Wayne Williams. Go right ahead, sir.
Happy to be here.
Okay, would you mind giving us an update as to what has happened since we last talked? And I believe where we were is that the state had given a response that perhaps the evidence that was sought and ordered by the magistrate was not available.
Well, the state's response was broader than that. The state responded to the order by saying the magistrate had erroneous and improper decision in ordering the state to do large production of documents and other materials ordered in the magistrate's order. They were really trying to shirk their duties in our position, and they didn't say whether or not those materials were available in their formal response. Subsequently, I found out a few days before our response was due to their motion to have that discovery order reconsidered. I found out from a representative from the State Attorney General's office that the Jackson tapes, the non-consensual monitoring tapes, that is, have been destroyed some time ago. And it's just another example of, the certain state law enforcement personnel destroying evidence that they know is material to this case.
So what has the reaction of the magistrate been, if any, since her orders, were not fulfilled?
Well, we haven't been back before the magistrate. What the state did is they made a motion to the district court judge, a higher judge in the state, in the federal system, seeking basically their intervention with respect to this discovery order. We responded to that motion last Friday. I don't know how quickly we'll hear back from the district court. We're hoping they do the right thing and send it back down to the magistrate and order the state to comply with her order, but we won't know until we hear. You just never know how these things are going to go.
And what is the last thing that you can tell us about Wayne Williams in terms of his reaction to what has been happening and the ongoing interest in the case that he has been for decades unsuccessful in getting public attention drawn to it?
Well, obviously Wayne is very encouraged by the renewed interest in this case, by, Chief Graham reopening 5 of the murders, and not only is the media interested in this case again, but they appear to be interested in hearing, in the past, the media bent on this case. Wayne was labeled by the media very early in this matter as the Atlanta child murderer, and that was the media labeled him that. He was charged with killing 2 adults. He was convicted in the press. Yeah, and he was convicted of killing 2 adults. But as we're learning more and more, and as we've learned subsequent to his conviction, that conviction was obtained by virtue of, aside from all the junk science that came in and the fibers and all that, they withheld critical evidence.
Correct me if I'm wrong, counsel, but he was convicted in the press, he was convicted in the court of killing 2 adults, but in the press, he was convicted of being the Atlanta child murderer.
Exactly, and the state was totally complicit in that, of course. They closed 22 murders after he got convicted, and without any explanation, just, the obvious intimation being, well, he obviously killed all these kids. But a lot of the mothers knew that was bogus, and a lot of people never believed that Wayne was convicted or was guilty of any murders, including Chief Graham, who was on the task force.
That's correct. One last thing. I spoke to you last time and asked if there was anything that people could do in terms of lending their support financially, and you indicated that you were looking at that and setting up a website and a way to receive public support. Has that changed, or is that still in the offing?
It's still in the works, and I'm very appreciative of your willingness to put that out there to anybody who may care. And we're trying to get that up and running as quickly as we can. At the same time as we're handling the preparation of legal filings, and so there's just a lot to do right now. But we could sure use the help. But we want to make sure that it's set up in a proper way so that people can have confidence in knowing that it's really going to Wayne's defense and that it's completely above board. And so nobody would be well served by us rushing that process. And I would encourage your listeners to keep their eye out and critically listen to everything they hear about this case. And if something smells a little fishy, it merits a closer look, because it probably is.
Well, thank you, Attorney Michael Lee Jackson, attorney for Wayne Williams. And we're going to look for additional updates. And again, feel free to use KPFT as a platform to get information out when and should it become, advantageous to do so.
Well, I thank you for that, and look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to On the Real Side and Part 3 of Getting Away with Murder, the Atlanta child murders. I'm Emmett Abati Doe. One question has not really been asked or answered. Why? And why Atlanta? Why children? Why predominantly males? Why the failure to stop or catch the real killers? Why the media collusion with misstatements and hype when the majority of the abductions and bodies were disposed of were mostly confined to a narrow swath of the city? Chet Detlinger and Jeff Prue, our two experts who got part of it right 20 years ago, please stand by. Okay, guys? And we'll hear from Tarari Jones, the author of Leaving Atlanta, as to what it was like to be a child growing up in a climate of terror. Okay, Tarari? But first, I'm going to hazard an unpleasant but perhaps obvious answer to the question, why? Why Atlanta? Why predominantly black males? Why? Ready? Ready. If the Injustice Department of these United States of America can bring and obtain murder convictions 60 years after the crime was committed, then groups of policymakers in and out of law enforcement chose not to act at the time on what was, as pigs, clearly viewed as a criminal act. But the indisputable facts beg to suggest a different reality. The Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott first went to trial to sue for his freedom in 1847. 10 years later, after a decade of appeals and court reversals, his case was finally brought before, get this, folks, the United States Supreme Court, in what is perhaps the most infamous case in its history. The court decided that all people of African ancestry, slaves as well as those who were free, could never become citizens of the United States, and therefore could not sue in federal court. The court also ruled that the federal government did not have the power to prohibit slavery in its territories. Scott, needless to say, remained a slave. That truthful decision is the reality that governs the true status of the people made in America. Our true status in America is and has been Dred Scott, in effect saying that black people have no rights a white man under law is bound to respect. He, white men, can if they want, but it's purely elective. Black people are things, not people. Thus, people made in America are still held as things, and you cannot commit a crime against a thing any more than you could, till recent, commit a crime against animals. Stay with me, folks. The circumstantial facts strongly suggest that for 2,000 years and 8 months, governments of so-called Western civilization have been waging undeclared and unconventional warfare on all darker-skinned people in a pecking order that appears to be arbitrary, but it is calculated, insidious, and merciless. What we, the descendants of African people stolen 500 years ago and who are still treated as property made in America, do as Dr. King tried to tell us to do, and that is to rise up and say, liberty or death. Enough is enough. I submit that the blood of every lynching, every beating, dragging, hanging, and accidental deaths while in the custody of government agents are done with the full knowledge of the white and sometimes brown perpetrators, that their actions will be sanctioned, justified, or at most under political pressure or embarrassment given light, inappropriate, disproportional sentences. In over 10,000, if over 10,000 public lynchings have been recorded in America, has any person been sentenced to death for murdering a person of color? Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Mexican, African, or Asian? Maybe one, just one. They were all protected by the very system of so-called just us in America. The record shows every DA, every crime lab, every courtroom, every institution reinforced, however so subtly, the maintenance of the oppression and subjugation of billions, including the millions who were made in America. We were placed outside the human family to suppress natural feelings of compassion, guilt, and revulsion, making the dark-skinned people of the world fair game to be hunted, brutalized, and placed below the animals, undeserving of respect, concern, compassion, deliverance, and protection. Such is the mindset that underlies every human atrocity from the Germans in Angola, the Belgians in the Congo, the Arabs in East Africa, the indigenous of all occupied lands, the American and Brazilian slave trades, the putting to death of every man, woman, and child on the island of Tasmania, the Australian government sanction of human hunts of Aboriginal people, the extinction of the Anahuac Indians at the sword and dogs and disease of Christopher Columbus, and American slavery, lynchings, chain gangs, the war on drugs, the explosion of the prison industrial complex, AIDS, desperate young men forced to become mercenaries. So a simple matter of terrorizing the black population of Atlanta by allowing the slaughter of their children to discredit, humiliate, and embarrass at the time a fledgling black administered government by holding it up to the world was an emasculation and a castration of the promise and a dashing of any dream of black power. In short, people within the U.S. government, state, and local law enforcement condoned and protected the real killers to add further insult to outrage. And why Wayne Williams? It was another ritual sacrifice of the innocent lamb, which displayed absolute control of all the systems that kicked into high gear without notice to lynch the nigger. But on paper and on TV this time, has it not always been thus? The secret connections and influence to get a conviction of any innocent placed in the crosshairs of the system, and everybody gets the message to stay in line, toe the line, or else. Any DA can bring back an indictment on a Mother Teresa or Carol Doe Porter. Can you say Mumia, Leonard Peltier, O.J., Reuben Carter, Warren Moon, Kobe, Michael Jackson, and the hundreds released from many death rows by the Innocent Project? Distasteful and repugnant to the mind these thoughts may be, they offer strong, logical, long-established patterns that I maintain persist to this day, i.e. the shooting in the back 4 times of a black deputy. It could have been the young boy driving without a driver's license, a capital offense with summary execution on the spot, it appears. If you're not brain dead or soul dead, the Atlanta child murders was just another government-sanctioned psychological warfare operation. It's an intelligence test that we have refused to pass, that the system must have the conscious and unconscious collusion and cooperation of the targeted population for profitable uses, i.e. prisons, on the stock market, the new commercial uses of black bodies to continue to produce wealth, even a bank for body parts. What must the people made in America do? Frederick Douglass said, them who resist us the leastest gets beaten the oftenest. What could be a meaningful first step in the right direction is for people made in America to fight to be recognized by law as a human being and get a non-aggression declaration decreed, for reparations to be demanded before a non-aggression decree that has teeth is issued makes little or no sense, and any demand for reparations before a declaration is decreed is yet but another psychological weapon of mass distraction. When we come back, a real conversation with you and Ms. Terari Jones, Chet Decklinger, and Jeff Prue, as they update us on the real side. I'm Emmett Abati Doe.
Children, I talks to God, and God talks to me. I goes out and I talks to God in the fields and in the woods. And this morning, I was walking out, and I got over the fence, and I saw the wheat holding up its head, looking very big. I goes up, and I takes hold of it. You believe it? There was no wheat there. And I said, God, what is the matter with this wheat? And he says to me, Sojourner, there's a little weasel in it.
Somewhere we must come to see that we must rise up and stand on our own 2 feet and say to our white brothers that we are determined to be men. This is what the movement is saying. Dear somebody, we are determined to gain our freedom. And we're going to start with ourselves by freeing our own psyche, our own souls. This is where we've got to start first. For you see, in the final analysis, if we're going to be truly free, nobody else can do that for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do that for us. No Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do that for us. If we are going to be truly free, we must reach down into the inner depths of our being and sign with the pen and ink of assertive manhood our own Emancipation Proclamation.
Everybody all right? Welcome back. I'm Emmett Abati Doe. Should you have any questions or comments about On the Real Side, email me at doe@storkreality.com. That's doe@storkreality.com. That's DOE@STORKREALITY.com. Let's begin with Miss Jones. Terari? Hello? Terari? Hello? Okay. We need to get them back on the line. And, Jeff, are you on the line?
I sure am. Hi, Emmett.
How you doing, Jeff?
Good.
What's happening? And we're going to invite our callers to call and talk to Jeff Prue. And the number here is 713-526-5738. And calls are starting to line up. And you can have your comment, your say, and we're going to move right along. So, Jeff, what's the latest?
Well, the latest right now, Emmett, is that the ball in Wayne Williams' appeal is now in the court of a federal judge named Beverly Martin in Atlanta for the Northern District of Georgia. And she has now received various filings from, I think the most recent filing is from Wayne Williams' lawyers. And the filing before that, of course, was from the state of Georgia in response to an order from a U.S. magistrate for the state of Georgia to turn over exculpatory audio tapes and documents to Wayne Williams' lawyers. And the state responded by saying they're asking for too much. And besides, we can't be sure that these videotapes exist. So in the latest filing that Wayne Williams' lawyers filed on July 22nd, they pointed out in there that in a telephone conference call, the state, the deputy attorney general, who is handling the Wayne Williams appeal on behalf of the state of Georgia, conceded in this telephone conference call that these tapes were destroyed. So the bottom line is, under a habeas appeal, and I think Chet can correct me, obviously, if I'm wrong, because Chet is a lawyer, but according to Wayne Williams' lawyer, the federal judge now can indeed order Wayne Williams released. And the state is then obligated to do so unless the state chooses to go to trial again.
And that's exactly what they want to have happen anyway.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, because now, if indeed these tapes have been destroyed that are exculpatory to Wayne Williams, then I think it's going to be very embarrassing for the state to have to get up and admit that in open court in front of a jury that would be weighing Wayne Williams' fate. So that'll be very interesting whether the state would really choose to go to trial.
Okay, Jeff, I'm going to ask you to hold on just a hot second, because we want to talk to her.
Sure.
And she's on the line.
Good.
Terari?
Yes.
How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Terari, you are, I want to, give a plug for your book, because we've been doing that. But you're the author of Leaving Atlanta. But I don't want to talk to you, and that's a Warner publication?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to talk to you as a publicist and an author, okay, as a writer. I'd like to talk to little Terari, okay, and ask her to tell us something about what it was like growing up at that time in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, I was born in 1970, so I was about 9 years old when the Atlanta child murders happened, and I was in the 5th grade. And 2 of the children who were abducted were students at my elementary school. So it's like we were living at ground zero of the Atlanta child murders.
Mm.
And you have to keep in mind that, this went on so long, about 18 months, that it was kind of like people who lived through a war, how you start to learn how to live your life around what's happening. Because, your children grow and change so much every day, so life is still happening. So this became integrated in being a part of our lives.
Mm. So it's like traumatic bonding. I mean, it becomes like like people living in an alcoholic system. Being crazy is normal.
Yes, like, for example, knowing that you shouldn't go outside alone becomes normal, even though you're a little kid and your impulse is to go outside. These things become normal. But I also think in many ways it was harder on our parents even than it was on us, because children, I think, are not very good at assessing danger. That's what makes them so vulnerable. So for me, for example, I was 9, I had a brother who was 11. I felt that I was safe if my brother was around. But my mother and father knew that an 11-year-old and a little, a dog, a cockapoo. 11-year-old and a cockapoo.
And a cockapoo.
Yeah, that's nothing, but I felt safe in the presence of my brother and my dog. So there were moments when I found comfort when there really wasn't comfort, but I didn't know enough to know.
And what did the school, what was the instructions that you got at various levels? I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I don't want to say something happened that didn't happen, but I'm trying to get a sense, as you're doing such a great job, of providing what it was like through the eyes of a child.
Well, one thing that I know about, I mean, I even kind of make fun of this in my book, Leaving Atlanta, is that in the 70s, people, like now, I think people think a lot more about talking to children as human beings. But, you know, just imagine us. We're in Atlanta. Children are dying, dropping around us like flies, and they bring a policeman in, and he gives us these coloring books about don't talk to strangers. You know, and I just remember we were just sitting there looking at this policeman who we're filling in the coloring book, and the policeman saying,
Jeff, what do you got to say about police in the school with coloring book?
Yeah,
well, there were a lot of cosmetics, I think, that were being applied to this whole thing, everything from reward money to curfews, and I think Ms. Jones is correct in the sense that many of these victims in our research indicated that they got into cars willingly with people they knew. And it wasn't always really a case of not going near strangers.
Right.
That didn't really seem to impact these. And of course, as we found out in our research during the course of this investigation, we found out that many of these victims
all knew
had
each other.
interpersonal and geographic relationships.
Right. Terari?
Yes?
You knew 2 students in your school.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Did they both live, to your knowledge, in the same community?
Yes, they lived near the Atlanta University Center School.
Okay. And no time, Jeff, did they acknowledge that there was a pattern or any connection, right?
Right. The authorities, about the only way they acknowledged there was a connection by just bunching names onto a list. And I would be curious, just for my own edification, of Miss Jones could remember who those 2 children were.
Yes, Yusuf Bell, he went to E.A. Ware Elementary School.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, I remember Yusuf Bell in the book.
The schools in the area didn't have resources, so there was a gifted class at Oglethorpe. So he would come to Oglethorpe to take gifted classes.
Oh, I see,
in our school. And the other was Terry Pugh. He was in our class, but he was much older than we were. He would only come to school maybe 4 times a year.
Yeah, Terry Pugh was about 15 at the time, and Yusuf would have been about your age, I think, Ms. Jones.
Yusuf was about my age. We were like 9 or 10. But Terry Pugh was 15, which means he was a full 50% older than we were.
I see.
Okay.
And so between Yusuf and Terry Pugh, it seemed like that was the full scope of boyhood. Sweet Yusuf, who was in the gifted class, and then Terry Pugh, who drove a motorcycle and like kind of terrorized the more average children.
Right.
So it seemed like the whole scope of childhood was in danger.
Right. I think you're right about that.
Okay, we're going to take a call, okay?
Okay.
All right. You're on the real side. Hello?
Hello?
You want to turn your radio down, please? Nick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you turn your radio down, please, sir?
Oh, okay. I'm far away from the radio, but, I guess outside listening to the radio.
Okay.
Okay.
Nick, you have a question for our guest or a comment?
Yes, sure. Not a question. I have a couple of little things to say. Number one, I never believed that brother killed all them children. And the way that we have our young ones raising up and accept so many different things in this land here without guide them to understanding what is happening in this land to black people is not a good thing. It's not healthy at all. I don't know how we can change it in the way that there is so many things that raising up our children to understand, and the schools and everything like this.
Well, we might be able to do better by turning off the TV and not only talking to the young people in our own family, but the kids in the neighborhood. I need to move on and take another call, okay?
Okay, brother.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Dawn?
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I just had a question. I've listened to your previous 2 shows on this topic, and you may have covered this and I missed it. If you accept that it's not Wayne Williams that's the killer, is there anybody on a short list that might be the Atlanta child
Jeff can
killer?
answer that question.
Yes,
he'll answer that question offline, ma'am. Thank you.
Unfortunately, is deceased now. He died of AIDS. The only case of the 29 that made the authorities' list of cases, there was one case in which there were eyewitnesses that pointed to a man who was not Wayne Williams as the killer. His name was Brooks. He was 29 years old. He was African-American. He ran a coin laundry, which is where this murder took place. And there were additional eyewitnesses who gave statements to the authorities that they saw this man who appeared to be Mr. Brooks dispose of the boy's body. Clifford Jones was the child.
And they interviewed him. The police brought both of them in, and talked to them several times, didn't they, Jeff?
Well, they brought Jamie Brooks and his companion, Calvin Smith, whose whereabouts are unknown today. But, they brought them in, questioned them numerous times. They changed their stories. Jamie Brooks was said in one document to have flunked at least 2 lie detector tests. But the authorities made no arrests. And as you know, when the police decide not to make an arrest, that effectively prevents a jury from ever hearing this information. And the Wayne Williams jury did not hear what I've told you.
Mm-hmm. Terari?
Yes?
And what did you come away with, and I'm sure this is part of your novel of Leaving Atlanta, would you give your website?
Oh, my website is www. It's my name, TAYARIJONES.com.
Okay. And you also have a new book out.
Yes, it's called The Untimely.
And that's sort of set in the backdrop of...
It's set in Atlanta again. In writing, Atlanta is my hometown, but when I wrote Leaving Atlanta, I just realized that it was a city of so many secrets. So it's another story kind of looking at what is Atlanta, how is Atlanta.
Terari, I want to thank you very much for making yourself available. And if you can get those books, because we're going to give away some books, I do have a... did you send that book to me?
I did.
You did? I mean, the second one?
Yes.
Okay. So I at least have one book to give to caller number 5. Caller number 5, I can make one book available of Leaving Atlanta. And also, you can send me the other books so that we can use them during the upcoming fundraiser, okay?
Excellent.
Thank you very much for joining us on The Real Side.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye. Okay, and Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, we need to wind up. We only have about 2 minutes left. We don't have... Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We've got a few more minutes left.
Oh, okay.
And I want to focus on taking more calls. And again, the number is 713-526-5738. And I would think that the lines would have been jumping off the hook, but people are still in a state of shock. They don't know what to do. Okay. So, anyway, where did you hear the report from Attorney Jackson?
Well, you mean what report was that?
Well, we did an interview with him that we played.
Oh, in the last broadcast.
No, this one.
Oh, I didn't hear it in this one. No.
Okay, you were offline. Okay. Mm-hmm. So anyway, things are moving forward, and hopefully that we will be able to get some resolve. But I think that if the state cannot produce any evidence, and as you say, the judge could rule to release Wayne Williams or say that she's going to release him.
Well, she would have to order the state to do it.
Okay.
And then the state
or retry him, or release him or retry him.
Right. They would be compelled to release him unless they choose to go to trial again. And that appears to be problematical because this key evidence has been destroyed, admittedly by the state. And, of course, many witnesses are dead now, and many have recanted, and many have been discredited since this trial. So
And you also have Chief Graham's work.
Right.
So there's a whole other element that the state could be in deep doo-doo if they take this man back to trial and try to lynch him again.
Exactly. I think in Wayne's first trial, he really went in there basically, in effect, with a pea shooter. And now if they try him again, he'll be going in there with cruise missiles.
Right. Okay. Jeff, I want to thank you for joining us here on The Real Side. And if they let me have an open mic again, we'll revisit this and bring people up to speed and up to date. Also, feel free to give me a beep and a buzz if something comes up, and we might be able to do something sooner, okay?
And we may have some news, too. Okay. You never know.
You never know.
All right. Thank you, Emmett, for your interest, as always.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Bye now.
All right. And again, to the KPFT listening audience, I want to, thank you for allowing us to do what we do here. This is the bastion of free speech radio. And I really hold to that very, very strongly. And again, if you have comments or questions concerning the program, you can communicate with me at doe@storkreality.com. That's doe@storkreality.com. STORK reality.com. And if you know anybody that's interested in M100, give me a call as well. So, anywho, okay, I'll be happy to. Let's go to Thomas. How you doing, Thomas? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great, sir.
Good. I've got a bit of a twist to this that I heard during the murders.
Okay.
And one thing, I listened to a gentleman by the name of Dick Gregory at the time.
Right.
He mentioned that it was very strange that the CDC was involved in the investigation of the murders, the Atlanta killing murders.
I think it was about melanin, I think he was saying.
Yes, he said that one strange thing, common denominator that they found amongst the kids is that they all had their blood drained, and that these kids had a sickle cell trait, and that he felt that the blood was being used. At that time, AIDS wasn't that popular. I think hepatitis. They were using their blood for some type of research to either hepatitis C or...
Well, they wouldn't have to kill him in order to get blood.
Well,
they could walk into the school and get it.
Well, it was strange that these kids, all their blood was drained. So I don't know if the attorney has information on the autopsies of these kids.
Well, the interesting thing about the autopsy, the parents maintained that the children were sexually mutilated.
Okay.
And there's known that the children were sexually assaulted, but yet nowhere was there DNA or anything else retrieved of semen or anything else. So again, I maintain that nothing like this happens without somebody giving the okay.
Why would the CDC be involved in a murder investigation? That's what's strange to me.
That's absolutely totally strange and goes back to what I was saying earlier.
Okay.
So anyway, I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us here on The Real Side.
I appreciate your program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
And also that we're going to try our best to bring additional kind of cutting-edge programming if we're given an opportunity. And if you'd like to see more of that or hear more of it, please give our program director, Ernesto Aguilar, a call and let him know. He's a real good dude. And if there's a need for and a desire, because you're the people who run this station, because you fund it, it could happen. So anyway, I want to thank you again for joining us. And for On the Real Side, I've been your host, Emmett Abati Doe.
This is Earth and Sky. A listener asks, as global climate warms, is more of Earth's surface turning into desert?
A recent report by the UN projected an increase in the coming years of desertification, the process by which useful land becomes desert. In addition to climate change, the report cited unsustainable land use practices as a major reason.
But that doesn't mean major deserts are expanding around their edges. We spoke to Christopher Potter of the Ecosystem Modeling Group at Ames Research Center in California. He said satellite data over the past 25 years show the southern margins of the Sahara Desert looking greener now than 2 decades ago.
And Potter said that a warmer climate doesn't necessarily mean a drier climate. In fact, he said a warmer climate might bring more rainfall to many areas.
So, surprisingly, we may see that we accelerate the water cycle, but we don't turn it off. But there are going to be winners and losers. It just, it depends on where you live.
Using climate models to predict exactly which places on Earth will get more rain and which less is extremely difficult.
The smaller the place you're trying to look at, the more difficult it is to take the climate model information and then scale it down to say you're going to be okay and you're not.
And that's our show. Special thanks today to NASA. Explore, discover, understand. I'm Joel Block with Deborah Bird for Earth and Sky.
This is the calendar of progressive events for Tuesday, August 2nd, a service of the Houston Peace and Justice Center. Tomorrow afternoon, there will be an interfaith prayer vigil in support of Houston janitors. This is part of the Justice for Janitors campaign, a movement concerning hard-working janitors uniting for fair working conditions and with better wages, health benefits, and job security. To participate, meet at 3 p.m. in front of the Houston Center Mall on the corner of Fannin and McKinney. Look for the purple and yellow balloons. To publicize your organization's event on this calendar, email the information to activist@ev1.net. Don't forget to include a contact name and number. Peace.
The proposed amendment to the bylaws to be voted on at the September 25th Pacifica National Board meeting in Houston incorporates changes in the text of the Foundation's bylaws as follows. In a delegate election year, the nominations for vacating seats shall open on July 25th and remain open for 31 days, closing on August 25th. The national and local election supervisors shall thereafter prepare the written ballots for each radio station, listing all of the candidates and setting forth all other information required by these bylaws. Ballots shall be mailed or otherwise made available to the members on September 30th, or the following business day of September 30th is a mail holiday. To be counted, a ballot must be received on or before November 15th, known as the election close date. All ballots shall be held sealed until the election close date. If the required quorum of ballots is not received by the election close date, then the election close date shall be extended by 2 additional weeks. The national and local election supervisors shall have up to 15 days after the election close date to count the ballots and to certify the results to the LSBs, the board, and the members, which results must be reported by December 1st. Or, if the election close date was extended, by December 15th, and shall be posted on the Foundation and the radio station's websites. If no quorum of ballots is obtained by the extended date, then those delegates whose terms would have expired upon the election of new delegates shall remain in office until the next regularly scheduled delegate election. Member record dates will be August 16th. For further information on this amendment, visit us at www.pacifica.org. This is commercial-free, listener-sponsored Pacifica Radio, KPFT, Houston. School is out, the sun is shining, and the pace has slowed down from that hectic spring.
Now you're finally able to tackle those projects you put aside, like that yard work or the home improvement job.
Or even volunteering at KPFT.
Starting August 20th, KPFT kicks off its 1-week Summer Sizzle Pledge Drive, and we need your help to make it a success.
Yeah, and it's too hot to be outside anyway, so why not put your spare time to use this summer by volunteering?
Our phone volunteer trainings are Wednesday, August 10th at 6 p.m.
And again on Saturday, August 13th at 10 a.m.
The sessions will be held at KPFT Studios, 419 Leavitt Boulevard.
You'll meet KPFT listeners just like you. And
the free program you just heard was paid for by the listener members of KPFT.